Greetings and welcome to Phantom's Edge. This will be Chapter 9 of this reading. Amazingly, even with two ships, one being a powerful battleship from the bureaucracy, Kaio and his entire crew were no match for the Ecuador. Eventually, their cannons were blown apart and only a handful of the crew, with the two captains of both ships, were left intact. Kaio signaled to surrender, as did Thomas, and the three ships came together to have Brunhilde board them. Thomas moved the Andromeda to the starboard side of Kaio's ship, while the Ecuador aimed its port side towards the Wild Ones. Kaio and Thomas moved into the center of the Wild One, while Brunhilde boarded them alone. She was a fully black-furred felina cat, short compared to most, and had a skin-tight attire for a pirate. She had a cutlass and chain stick hung on her left side, a gun tucked in front under her belt, and a long black whip rolled up and hung behind her waistline. She glanced around at those amongst the ship, then looked at the Kanai captain. She recognized him quickly and smiled as she wandered over to him. "Fancy meeting you here, loves," Brunhilde said, standing just a few feet away. Keeping his eyes on the felina, Thomas whispered to his captain and asked, "Who is she?" Kaio turned towards the Rodania boy and plainly said, "No point in whispering while in the presence of a bitch." The man shook his head slightly, then quickly corrected his words with, "I mean man." Brunhilde reached for her chain stick with her right hand and slapped it against Kaio's stomach, motioning across to her outer side. The Kanai bent over as he went to rub where he was struck, while Brunhilde removed her smile and barked, "Silence, dog!" She then struck across the Kanai's face with the chain stick before moving it to her lower right side. After the Kanai yelped, Felina glanced at the Rodania boy, while noticing his mother walk over to hold the child. Brunhilde then looked down at the man and said, "Oh, you better not have, mutt." Kaio moved to stand upright again as he pointed his right finger up to halt the felina, while he said, "Now, you should take a look at the facts here, Brunhilde." He then lowered both of his hands and continued, "For one, I don't care, dearie. You were a one-time thing. 2, I hate you. 3, silence." Brunhilde struck her stick against Kaio's left thigh. Then she watched the Kanai kneel before her in pain as she yelled, "If it weren't for me, you wouldn't even be a pirate, mutt." "Not true," Kaio responded as he motioned to stand. "I'd still be a pirate, just..." He glanced up and to his right for a moment, while closing his left eye. Then he looked back at the felina and continued, "Hate you more." Men and their arrogance. Brunhilde turned away to walk towards the plank, held in between the Ecuador and Wild One, while she put her chain stick away and muttered, "One-time thing, my ass." Kaio smirked at that as he called out, "That's exactly what I'm talking about, loves. That ass." Those of Kaio's crew laughed at that, then went quiet as the felina turned back and glared at them as she growled. Afterwards, she turned to those on the ship and said, "I'll be taking a few members from these ships aboard my own, including the captains. The rest of you can either take the ships as far as they can go in their condition, or abandon them and take the lifeboats. Any who object to my authority will be executed on the spot. Am I clear?" Those who were crew members of Kaio's began arguing, but stopped as the Kanai glanced around at them and called out, "Everyone, please, shut your traps." They all quieted once more as they looked over at the man as he continued, "It's obvious what we must do. We must listen to the demands of the thing and have the chosen of us board its vessel." He then raised his right fist into the air and continued, "So we can mutiny!" Everyone around Kaio laughed at that as some cheered, while Brunhilde's upper lip twitched as it began showing her left side fang. However, instead of attacking the Kanai that lowered his arm, she turned her anger into a sarcastic smile as she said, "Oh, I'd so love to see you try, Kaio. Unfortunately," she tilted her head to the right a bit as she continued, "your mutinies consist of rape, and sadly enough, you don't have the manhood to do such a thing on me." Everyone was quiet as they glared at Brunhilde, while Kaio just raised his right eyebrow in surprise to the insult. He glanced around once more at his crew, then looked at the felina and said, "Ouch." He then gave a blank expression as he continued, "However, you have to think on this one, loves. Is it that I'm too small, or have you had so many others before me that you've just grown too big?" At that point, Brunhilde had enough. The woman reached for her whip with her right hand, which Kaio tried to run from by heading onto the Andromeda. But he was unable to get away as she slung her weapon. It wrapped around his neck. Then with one hard tug, the felina was able to pull the Kanai over to her. Black Cat got the dual-edged demon to face her as he neared, while she raised and aimed her left knee below the man's belt. Just as Kaio was struck with great pain, slightly leaning into the felina, Brunhilde spoke into the Kanai's left ear and hatefully said, "Lie down, mongrel." She then let the man fall onto the deck, hurling into himself from the pain, while the woman called out those who she was going to take aboard her own ship. The Black Cat took 2 random people of Kaio's crew, while also taking Thomas, Martha, Daisy, and Kaio himself, leaving the rest to use the lifeboats to head to the nearest island. They had to leave the Wild One and the Andromeda, forced to watch as the ships burned away. Amazingly, Daisy was able to collect the bureau suit she cleaned before stepping onto the Ecuador, but it was confiscated by the felina captain. As usual, Martha and Daisy were told to work in the kitchen below deck, while Thomas became once more a simple go-to boy around the vessel. Having passed out from his little experience with Brunhilde's wrath, Kaio was taken into the captain's quarters. There, his arms were bound together behind his back, while a collar and chain kept him from leaving the captain's bedside. At one point in their travels, Thomas had to enter the captain's quarters to report something from the crew. The boy noticed Kaio asleep on the floor near Brunhilde, while the felina gently pet the man's head with her right hand as she laid on her back to stare up at the ceiling. The Black Cat glanced at the boy as he wandered over, then the woman asked, "So you're not his son?" Thomas shook his head in response, then said, "The crew wanted me to inform you that we're nearing Philae." "Good." Brunhilde then waved her hand's fingers to tell the boy off as she continued, "Begone with you, child." "Might I ask why you wish to go there, ma'am?" Brunhilde stopped petting her slave as she turned in her bed to face the Rodenu boy, and replied, "I saw that jacket your friend brought onto my ship. I know Kaio wants to use you to infiltrate the bureaucracy, since that suit can only fit a child. Less, of course, that jacket was owned by a small man. Therefore, I want you to do so as well. So we'll be docking by morning come the next 3 days." Thomas nodded his head, then exited the felina's quarters as Kaio started to wait. Kanai glanced around the room, then tried to move his hands to scratch his head. However, with them bound, he quickly realized where he was and tried to run away. Unfortunately, he only got a few feet before the chain attached to his collar around his neck stopped him. The man got choked as he fell back onto the floor, where he was able to look up at Brunhilde, who was sniggling at the sight of Kanai's futile attempt to flee. As the Kanai glared at the vicious woman, Brunhilde said, "Don't be like that, loves. I've done nothing wrong per se. Besides, how else am I to detain you if you won't be a good little daughter?" "I'm not your pet, wench," Kaio barked. "Now release me." The felina ignored the insult as she continued to smile at the man and said, "You can't escape our love, Kaio. You know I'm the only one for you. I made you what you are. I became who I am because of another. That dumb bimbo only barely enhanced your capabilities, nothing more." Kanai tried to rip away the rope on his wrists, with no luck of even stretching them. Then he stopped for a moment as he said, "You may be exquisite in body and an angel in bed, but you're nowhere near as great or meaningful as Jackie. She and I were meant to be together, body and soul. You, of all people, are a sick and twisted creature bent on controlling man with brutality and fear. Brunhilde glanced to her left, then looked back down at the Kanai and said, "You got the first and last part right." She then raised her left hand, holding her chain stick to ready for a swing, as she said, "But that middle part doesn't sound right." The black cat put fear into the dual-edged demon's eyes as he bent his ears back, while Kaio said, "Oh boy." The loud sound of leather snapped through the air, followed by a high-pitched yelp from a dog. The noise came to everyone's attention out on deck, as they glanced over at where they heard the painful racket come from. After a few seconds, they all just went back to work as Thomas spoke with one of Brunhilde's crew members. The man was an old Perseone raccoon, possibly crazy, and was at least twice the boy's size. He only carried a pistol between himself and a large belt, while constantly smoking a pipe. The two sat on the center of the starboard side railing, taking a break for a moment, while Thomas asked, "Why do they call her the Black Cat?" "Aye, my boy, that be a mystery even to me. The only means as to why is because most seem to cross her path find themselves unlucky for quite some time. Your so-called captain was the unluckiest of all." "How so?" "He was once a part of her crew, before being known as the dual-edged demon, and he betrayed Brunhilde for another." "Miss Jacqueline, right?" "Aye. Kaio was a simple go-to boy like yourself, yet was given higher standards amongst the crew since Captain Brunhilde favored him. But one day, the boy fell in love with another, asked to be taught the ways of a grand swordsman. A week passed and Kaio never showed his face again to Captain Brunhilde, yet returned one night while she was asleep." Thomas glanced around for a second, then turned back to the Perseone and asked, "What happened?" The man leaned towards the boy and asked, "What do you think made him the dual-edged demon, my boy?" Having given the Rodania some fright, Perseone sat himself up straight and continued, "He slaughtered all the crew members using his teachings from the girl he met, wielding two blades at once at such a fast pace no one could comprehend. I was left alive, along with the captain, for he would not tread past her cabin doors that I was to defend from within." The man grasped his pipe with his right hand to aim the mouthpiece at the other crew members, while he said, "These men here are of new blood, some acquired just before we got you and the demon." He bit down on his pipe once more and continued, "Most have not seen close combat, even after setting foot onto this vessel. Kaio took all of our finest men, even women, just to say his goodbye to the Black Cat." Why would he do that? The two hopped off the railing and went back to work moving a few barrels, while the old man replied, "I say he did it to try and gain entry to the bureaucracy, but Brunhilde thinks otherwise. She believes he did it because his new girlfriend told him to. Even to this day, we still don't know." Thomas looked down, disappointed to hear about his captain's past. However, he didn't wish to believe Kaio would be so heartless for no reason. There had to have been a good explanation for his actions against Brunhilde. Nothing towards him leaving her or him listening to another woman. Unless he was truly a demon, Kaio would never kill someone without something in his favor set to mind. Would he? This concludes the reading of Chapter 9. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you've liked what you've seen and heard, be sure to check out my other two novels, Lore of the Endowment and Ryu the Demon Slayer. Link will be in the description below. Other than that, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you next week reading Chapter 10.